You know those clickbait, what Apple doesn't want to tell you videos, and then you watch the video and it's just like how to switch off Dolby Vision or something ridiculous. This isn't one of those videos. This is genuinely about something that Apple really doesn't want to tell you.
And we'll also talk about why video creators might not want to buy a 256GB iPhone 17 Pro or Pro Max, as I did. Imagine if you bought a 2TB iPhone 17 Pro Max with enough space to record all that beautiful Apple ProRes RAW, only to find that you had to use an external SSD. Now, why Apple decided to go this route is still something of a mystery, and it's a mystery which has kind of created a bit of a debate online. The thing is, not only do you need an external SSD, but to record ProRes RAW, you also need to use a different app, either the Final Cut Camera 2.0 or Blackmagic Camera. Now, Apple ProRes was first introduced via the iOS update for the iPhone 13 Pro back in 2021. And then along came Apple Log with the iPhone 14 Pro. With the iPhone 17 Pro and Pro Max, which are basically the same in terms of camera specs, we now have Apple ProRes RAW. So what is ProRes RAW and how is it different to regular ProRes? Apple ProRes is a compressed video codec that compresses already processed image data. So it uses intra-frame compression where each frame is compressed independently. And this is designed for high quality video editing with good compression efficiency. But the image data is baked in, meaning that white balance, ISO, and other image settings, they're fixed during the capture and then they cannot be changed later. So ProRes RAW compresses the raw sensor data before it's turned into a final image, and it actually captures the sensor's Bayer filter data and then applies Apple ProRes compression technology to that raw data. Because it is compressed raw sensor data, that means it keeps much more original information, which is then more flexible to manipulate later in post-production, such as adjusting white balance and ISO after shooting. Put simply, ProRes compresses video frames after image processing, which means colors and brightness are fixed. ProRes RAW compresses sensor data before image processing, which means more flexibility, but at the cost of more storage space as well as more processing power. So why won't Apple let us record ProRes RAW to the internal storage of the iPhone 17 Pro, even if we have 2TB of space? Some people have speculated that essentially this all just boils down to a long-running patent battle with Red Digital Cinema. Red owns key patents around compressed RAW video technology, which is exactly what ProRes RAW uses to shrink these huge raw video files into manageable sizes without losing essential image data. Red's patent covers how raw sensor data can be compressed in a way that retains the ability to recover full image quality. And they aggressively protect this patent and have sued or challenged companies like Sony and Nikon for infringing it. Now, in 2019, Apple actually jumped into this fight and they challenged Red's patents at the US Patent Office. And they argued that the patents were, kind of too broad or not really that novel. But in the end, Apple lost. The Patent Office upheld Red's claims, and this means that Apple has to license, or they have to work around Red's patented tech to use compressed RAW. In 2024, Nikon, which is a giant in photography and imaging, actually acquired Red Digital Cinema. And this kind of strategic move gave Nikon control over Red's renowned compressed RAW patents and technology. So we've got some people online who've commented saying that they think that Apple might be deliberately avoiding letting the iPhone record ProRes RAW internally just to minimize any kind of potential patent infringement that they might risk, or kind of legal issues to do with that. So the theory goes that If they record it internally, then they might drag Apple into, some sort of serious legal issues. So then the logical thing is that Apple's workaround is to require ProRes RAW recording only to an external SSD. So it kind of makes sense that Apple's workaround, requiring you to record ProRes onto an external SSD, is a kind of way of avoiding these legal issues. By offloading the heavy compressed RAW recording to external drives, the internal phone system is going to handle less of the patented process. And the theory goes that this is going to reduce the legal issues, or the chances of getting sued by Red, basically. But there's a big problem with this, and that's that the patent actually covers compressed RAW technology itself and not just the data that's stored. Whether ProRes RAW video is recorded internally or to an external SSD, Red's patent is still going to be in play because any use of that compression method falls under their intellectual property rights. So it turns out that simply recording to an external SSD does not bypass Red's patented technology. Another suggestion is that Apple doesn't want users accidentally filling up their storage with huge ProRes RAW files. Personally, I think this is kind of unlikely because all they'd need to do is have a pop-up warning for users before they proceed. And as well, you have to switch to a different camera app to record ProRes RAW. So are you really going to do this by accident? And anyway, regular ProRes files are not even that much smaller than ProRes RAW. And yet, you can record those internally at 30 frames per second. Now, if there was a workaround to allow the iPhone 17 Pro or Pro Max to record ProRes RAW without an SSD attached, somebody somewhere is bound to find it, and, that's exactly what they did. You're still going to need an SSD, but the hack basically allows you to remove it again and then start recording to your internal storage. So this isn't going to work with the Blackmagic app, but it does work with the Final Cut Camera 2.0 app. So you just connect the SSD as normal, set up the app to record ProRes RAW, and then minimize the app, bringing up your home screen. And then just go ahead, remove the SSD, and then reopen the Final Cut Camera app, and simply press record. Videos are now going to be recorded directly to your iPhone 17 Pro's internal storage. But you might not want to do this, and here's why. So this might be why Apple doesn't allow you to record ProRes RAW internally, because the answer probably goes beyond patents or software limitations. It's actually more likely to be about the harsh demands that ProRes RAW video places on storage hardware, specifically the internal flash memory. ProRes RAW creates files with very high bit rates, and this means that the storage system has to be able to handle very fast, sustained writing for extended periods. And for an iPhone, that's a pretty tough ask. You see, the thing is that internal flash memory, while incredibly fast for everyday tasks, it does have limits on how many times data can be written. And this is called write endurance. So recording ProRes RAW, especially in high quality modes like HQ or OpenGate, pushes the storage to extremes. And this continuous heavy write cycles generates lots of heat and it increases wear, risking the degradation or the failure of the flash memory, faster than typical consumer use. Solid state drives, including the fast flash inside iPhones, CF Express cards in Pro cameras, as well as external SSDs, they all have a finite lifespan, and that's measured by a number called TBW, or terabytes written. And this means that they can only support writing a certain amount of the total data before the storage cells start to degrade and potentially fail. So if a CF Express card used by professional cameras, but if it wears out, it's not a big deal to replace it with a new card. However, if the internal flash of an iPhone wears out, that's a much more serious problem because the phone's main storage is going to begin to fail and the entire device risks becoming unusable. ProRes RAW video files are pretty big and they require very fast and continuous writes, which speeds up flash wear. So it is possible, therefore, that Apple prevents ProRes RAW recording internally just to avoid prematurely wearing out iPhone storage and basically destroying your phone. So if you have an external SSD which is specifically made for professional video workflows, it's going to be able to handle this kind of abuse better. You know, they have special components and cooling systems that are designed to take sustained writes without, breaking a sweat. And actually, people who have tricked the iPhone into recording internally have found that it quickly consumes massive amounts of storage, and it also likely stresses the device thermally. So while it is possible, it's not something that Apple actually recommends or has even designed the iPhone 17 Pro for. So why doesn't Apple just give us the reason? Why don't they just say it? Well, perhaps it's because they don't want to suggest that an iPhone might wear out from recording demanding video formats. Because, even regular ProRes is going to wear out your iPhone drive faster than using the standard H.265 or H.264 codecs. So if I'm being cynical, perhaps Apple doesn't mind you wearing out your iPhone a little bit faster, meaning you're going to need a new iPhone sooner. I don't know, maybe I'm just being a bit too sort of conspiracy theorist there. And perhaps ProRes RAW is just a little bit too damaging. And so people would start to notice and, Apple would get bad press. So this is all just guesswork. And, maybe Apple is going to give us a different answer at some point. But this brings us to why you might want to avoid the 256 gigabyte iPhone 17 Pro, especially if you're going to be shooting a lot of ProRes RAW. So as you know, the iPhone 17 series comes in different storage sizes. So we've got 256, 512, 1 terabyte, and then there's also 2 terabytes for the Pro Max model. So there's this YouTuber named Director Fame, and he noticed something interesting about the flash memory of the iPhone 17 Pro. And what he's found is that the 256 gigabyte versions use slower flash memory chips. And this means their internal storage speed, how fast it can read and write data, scores lower. Although he does say that this is actually still much faster than the previous iPhone 16 Pro's memory. So, in normal daily use, it's probably not going to make a big difference. But the thing is, as we just learned, flash memory is kind of key when it comes to recording high-quality codecs such as ProRes and ProRes RAW. So like I say, most iPhone users are not really going to notice any difference. But if we put this sort of simply, fast flash memory contributes to the longevity of a device, especially if you're recording a lot of ProRes or ProRes RAW. If you're still thinking about buying an iPhone 17 Pro and you're not sure about the storage size, just bear in mind it's not just a simple question about how many gigabytes you need. So my book, Smartphone Videography Beginner to Advanced, actually covers a lot of these kind of complicated sort of technical stuff, codecs and stuff like that. So if you're not really sure about this kind of thing, but you want to learn more about shooting video with your smartphone, with your iPhone, or any smartphone really, check out the book. But if you prefer video lessons, you can head over to Patreon, where I've got courses, and there's also a little community there, and we can chat about any projects that you got going. See you there, and that's it for this video. See you in the next one.